Okay, welcome students to yet another lesson of class 6, The Story of an Invitation. It's by L. M. Montgomery. We've already done this lesson, but in case you've forgotten, just for a recap, we will go through the entire lesson line by line. Okay? Now, Bertha Sutherland hurried home, alliteration. Okay? Bertha Sutherland hurried home from the post office and climbed the stairs of a boarding house to her room on the third floor. Her roommate, Grace Maxwell, was sitting on the divan by the window, looking out into the twilight. So if it's twilight, then what part of the day is it? It's evening. Yes. So she's hurrying home. Bertha is hurrying home. Home here means the boarding home that she's staying. So she and Grace are in the boarding house. Her roommate is Grace, and she climbs the stairs onto the third floor. She's living on the third floor. And she's coming from somewhere. Now that location is very important. And since this story is about the invitation, a story of an invitation, you do get a lot of mention of the letters. Remember, we had counted 5 letters in the entire story. So post office is another very important character in this story. So she's coming from the post office. Probably she's dropped in a letter there. Now Grace Maxwell was looking out into the twilight. A year ago, Bertha and Grace had come to Dartmouth to attend the academy and found themselves roommates. So they just happened to be in the same room in Dartmouth where they are studying in a boarding house. Bertha was bright. Now these are the qualities. We have a list in the PPT. Remember, I've shared it with you. Bertha was a bright, pretty, popular, and the favorite of her classmates and teachers. So she was the apple of everybody's eyes. She immediately attracted attention because she had a lot of positive energy. And we know why. Because she's a very beautiful soul, inside out. See, she looks bright and beautiful because her goodness shines from within. We've known her as a wonderful angel, isn't it? We've already done that. So Grace was a grave, quiet girl dressed in mourning. Now, compared to Bertha, Grace was very quiet, very sober, and moreover, she was mourning now. You know why she was mourning? Because her aunt, she was quite alone in the world. The aunt who had brought her up having recently died. So she was an orphan, definitely. Here there's no mention of her parents. So obviously we can conclude that she was an orphan and she was brought up by that aunt who had also recently died. So she was left all alone in this world. At first she had felt shy with bright and brilliant Bertha. So see, when you have a very bright and a cheerful and a positive person and you are very quiet and timid, very submissive kind of a person, then you don't tend to be very comfortable in the beginning. So she was very shy initially with Bertha. But they soon became friends because Bertha was very good. The credit goes to Bertha. And the year that followed was a very pleasant one. So they've just known for how many years? Just for a year. It was almost ended now, for the terminal exams had begun, and in a week's time the school would close for the holidays. So it was the end of the term, and so they were exams were going on at that time. So they both were doing their preparations, and this is a moment. Have some chocolates, Grace, said Bertha gaily. I got such good news in my letter tonight that I felt I must celebrate it fittingly. So I went into Carter's and invested all my spare cash in caramels. Caramels? Chocolates. I really miss those caramel popcorns when I used to go and watch movies in the theatre. I don't know whether you did too. Anyway, it's really fortunate the term is almost out, for I'm nearly bankrupt. Bankrupt? No money. When you have no money, zero balance. I have just enough left to furnish a tuck out. Now tuck out is written there at the end. What is a tuck out? It's a tuck out, a time to eat tuck food, especially sweets and pastries. So a time of indulgence. So left to furnish a tuck out for commencement night and no more. What do you mean by commencement night? That's another one, a ceremony at which academic degrees are conferred on successful students. So she says that I just have that much enough. So we are waiting for that commencement night. On that day we need to celebrate. So I've kept that money for that. What is your good news, may I ask? Said Grace. You know, I have an Aunt Margaret, commonly known called Aunt Meg out at Riversdale. That's the place they stay. Riversdale, don't you? There never was such a dear, sweet, jolly auntie. Again, now introduction to Aunt Meg. Look at these adjectives. Jolly, dear, sweet. I had a letter from her tonight. Listen, I'll read what she says. Now she reads the letter. I want you to spend your holidays with me, my dear. Mary Fairweather, Louis Fishy and Lily Dennis are coming too. So there is just room for one more, and that one must be yourself. Yourself means Bertha. Come to Riversdale when school closes and I'll feed you on strawberries and cream and pound cake and donuts and mince pies and all the delicious indigestible things that schoolgirls love and careful mothers condemn. So mothers say no chocolates, too much of strawberry. Sweet is not allowed, isn't it? Because mother has to be very strict with these things. But aunts, they don't need to be strict. Have you ever wondered why? Because aunts do not have to stay with you throughout. Now if she had been staying with her aunt would have also turned into a mother. Okay, so she's going once in a while, so the aunts tend to spoil their nieces. So she says, Mary and Lou and Lil are girls after your own heart. After your own heart means just like you. They're just like you. Indigestible things. Indigestible things means things which are difficult to digest. Not too good for the stomach. So donuts, mince pies, cream and pound cake. Now these are heavy stuff. Difficult for the tummy to digest. So they are girls after your own heart, I know, and you shall all do just as you like. So I'm just going to let you free. You can do whatever you want, you can enjoy, and you'll have picnics and parties and merry doings galore. Why? Because it's a vacation. It's a vacation and you need to chill out, you need to relax, you need to get refreshed. So that is the objective. So Aunt Meg has written that beautiful loving letter. I'm sure any girl would have loved to receive a letter like that. There, said Bertha, looking up with a laugh. Isn't that lovely? How delightful it must be to have friends like that, to love you and to plan for you, said Grace wistfully, because she had none. She says, wow, what a lovely news. Your aunt is there and you're so lucky to have such an aunt. I'm sure you will have a pleasant vacation, Bertie. As for me, now Bertie, she used to call Bertha Bertie, pyar se, yes, lovingly. As for me, I'm going into Clarkman's bookstore until school reopens. I saw Mr. Clarkman today and he agreed to take me. So she has no such beautiful plans. Her plans are rather dull and drab. Bertha looked surprised. She had not known what Grace's vacation plans were. I don't think you ought to do that, Grace, she said thoughtfully. You're not strong and you need a good rest. It will be awfully trying to work at Clarkman's all summer. There is nothing else for me to do, said Grace, trying to speak cheerfully. Now, see, she wants to tell Grace that she shouldn't be doing that because it's not good for her. It's not good for her. She's so weak. She needs to rest a little. But then Grace tries to be a little cheerful, though it isn't a very happy thought for her. There is nothing else for me to do, Grace said, trying to speak cheerfully. You know, I'm as poor as the proverbial church mouse. Proverbial church mouse. And a church mouse, a mouse that lives in the church, hardly gets any food, isn't it? So, very poor. Bertie, and the simple truth is that I can't afford to pay my board all summer and get my winter outfit until I do something to earn it. I shall be too busy to be lonesome. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine because I'll have to work hard and so I won't be lonely, and I shall expect long, newsy letters from you telling me all the fun you're having and passing your vacation on to me at second hand. So I will be reliving your vacation. You write to me about whatever you are doing and I will enjoy that. I tried them before dark. Now, well, I must set to work at those algebra problems. Now see, they're in the middle of the exams now. I tried them before dark, but I couldn't solve them. My head ached and I felt so stupid. How glad I shall be when exams are over. Obviously, her head is aching because she's lost her aunt recently. So she's still mourning and her head is aching. Anyway, she says, I'll be glad to have the exams over. So even Bertha is reminded of the exams suddenly. I suppose I must revise that senior English this evening, said Bertha absently. but she made no move to do so. Now this is important, please underline. She is saying that she wants to revise for exams, but she does not move. She was studying her friend's face. Now friend's face, again, alliteration. She's studying, observing. She's a very observant girl. How very pale and thin Grace looked. Surely much paler and thinner than when she had come to the academy, and she had not by any means been plump and rosy then. See, Grace was never a plump and rosy girl. She was very thin, but now she looked rather too thin. Now, why is that? Because she's not happy, and moreover, she's lost an aunt recently, and so that is weighing down, and the stress of the future. How is she going to pay her fees? How is she going to buy her winter uniform? How is she going to survive all alone? So all these thoughts for a poor little girl, it's too much for her. So that made a person look even more pale and thin and very sickly. You know that when a person is very sad, they look ill, they look older, they look very sad, they look terrible, in a word. Okay. So she's looking at Grace, and she's observing, and she doesn't like that. She doesn't like her friend to be so sad. I believe she could not stand 2 months at Clarkman's, thought Bertha. Now she can't take this. 2 months of hard work in Clarkman's bookstore. If I were not going to Aunt Meg's, I would ask her to go home with me. I could take her home with me. Now, Bertha has a home of her own. Now, she's just going on a holiday to her aunt's place. Or even if Aunt Meg had room for another guest, just one more guest, I just write her all about Grace and ask her if I could bring her with me, and Aunt Meg would understand. So she was a very understanding person. You can see from the way Bertha describes her aunt, we get to know what a wonderful person Aunt Meg must be. She always understands. Underline that. But she hasn't. So it can't be. Now when Aunt Meg has not mentioned about any extra person, that means it's not possible. And Bertha is very, very prim and proper, and she would not like to take these offers and try to, put a person in some kind of awkward position, by saying all these things. So it can't be. Just then a thought darted into Bertha's brain. Bertha's brain, alliteration. Mark that and underline this. Just then a thought. What nonsense, she said aloud so suddenly and forcibly that Grace fairly jumped. What is nonsense? So Grace couldn't understand. Wow, what are you talking about? Oh, nothing much, said Bertha, getting up briskly. See here, I'm going to get to work. I've wasted enough time. So she says this, and she tries to change the topic. She has thought of something. So we will continue with part 2 in the next video. Okay.